Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by cityCURRENT and brought to you by Lipscomb and Pitts Insurance. This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are giving back and making a difference so we can learn and do the same. We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose. Now here's our host, the CEO of cityCURRENT, Jeremy Park.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the ChangeMakers podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by cityCURRENT and powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park, and we are in for a fun treat on this one because we're talking with our good friend, Dr. Sarah Petschonek, who's the founder and CEO of Volunteer Odyssey, an organization we work with and have worked with for a long, long time. But she was one of the original interviews with the ChangeMaker podcast when we launched it back in 2016. So it's been 7 years. She was episode 5 and now she's episode 88. So a long time in between to talk about how much Volunteer Odyssey has changed, the lessons that she's learned. And so we're bringing back our good friend, Dr. Sarah Petschonek. How are you doing?
Hey, Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. I cannot believe it's been that many years and that many episodes. It feels like a completely different world now.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about this complete new world that we're in terms of volunteerism and activation and corporate compass. And we have a lot to dive into. But, before we switch over and start talking about some of the things that you've learned over this past season, and one in particular around serving overseas that we'll talk a lot about, let's start for those who missed episode number 5, and we'll make them go back and watch, how
Jeremy, everybody listens to every episode. Nobody missed episode number 5.
Well, hopefully they have and they know your whole story, but let's start with some basic context around Volunteer Odyssey. Go ahead and describe Volunteer Odyssey. Let's start there.
Yeah. Volunteer Odyssey, we are a volunteer center based in and built for Memphis, Tennessee. So we match volunteers to the nonprofits who need them the most. And we've been doing this for almost 11 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. So in that time, we've engaged more than 28,000 volunteers who've given more than 460,000 hours of service just to the Memphis community.
I know it's impossible to pick a favorite. It's like, saying your favorite child. So that's impossible. But, when it comes to nonprofits and meaningful experiences and matchmaking, give us a couple of special moments that stand out to you over the last few years.
One of the things we talk about is this range of volunteer experiences, right? From how soon can I get out of here, which probably most people have had an experience like that, to how soon can I come back? And one of my favorite how soon can I come back moments that I had was with a group called Urban Bicycle Food Ministry, which some of you may have done, but you ride on your bike and you hand out burritos to anybody who looks like they might be just a little hungry that night. And that was kind of this perfect intersection of, I love riding my bike, I love serving, and I love spending time with people. And that was just a really salient experience for me. And that was probably 8 or 9 years ago now. And so kind of moving that forward, one of the organizations here that really needs a lot of help is Room in the Inn. So they use congregations to house guests in our community who are experiencing homelessness. And your church or your congregation, any denomination, can volunteer to take in some families over the winter months when it's really cold. And that one just really landed with me too. So I don't mean to leave everyone else out, but if you ever want to know all the many ways you can volunteer, we have hundreds of opportunities, and I would love the opportunity to tell you more about them.
Absolutely. Well, you are a passionate advocate for volunteerism. Let's talk about why volunteerism is so important. And I think one is when you look at polarization across America, and that being on the increase or really at, what feels like an all-time high, volunteerism is the thing that brings our community together. And it's the thing that crosses over different races, religions, socioeconomic levels. And it brings the community together in a positive way. And I think that's just one element. But talk about, from your vantage point, why volunteerism is so important.
Yes. So volunteering has so many different nuances and ways it makes a difference. So one, and I think the way most people think about it, is volunteerism is important because we have so many people who are in need of help and support and services. Our nonprofits just don't have enough people to do that. So there are kids who are going without mentors. There are, families who don't have a place to sleep. There are veterans who are going hungry. Volunteers can change all of those things. You have the power to go and change that, to make a huge difference in one person's life. But I think one of the really other interesting things about volunteering, which you're alluding to, is that when you go to volunteer, if you find the right opportunity, like, you are getting something out of it too. It changes you. And that is both working with the people that you're there to serve and partner with, but also with the other volunteers. We did this volunteer satisfaction survey about 2 years ago and asked if you make meaningful connections when you volunteer. And the overwhelming response was yes. And it was with the people we are working with in every sense of that word. So these meaningful connections and getting to know people and their real stories and getting past labels and categories and just getting to make connections with other humans is so powerful.
I know that when you talk about volunteerism, obviously you gain self-confidence, the empathy, the connections, the relationships. You become a better person, a better leader, right? Because you can do so many things that equip you as you volunteer. But you also talk a lot about how when it comes to volunteerism, most people are waiting to be invited. And
Yes.
then also, too, that volunteerism is a little different, where if you have a bad experience from a restaurant, you don't go back to that restaurant. If you have a bad volunteer experience, you tend to say, volunteerism isn't for me. And so there's a lot of kind of nuances mentally, psychologically with volunteerism. Dive in a little deeper on some of those.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought those up. And so, it's interesting because most people say that they would volunteer if someone invited them. Like, that is pretty interesting, right? That's actually a really low bar. And so for anybody who's listening, I'll just pose this question to you as you're sitting and reflecting or running or wherever you're listening to this. Do you volunteer? Do you have an interest in volunteering? What would it take for you to volunteer? And for most people, they say, well, if a friend said, hey, I'm doing this, do you want to come? People would say, okay, yeah, sure, I'll try that. And so that is such this low barrier to volunteering. But one of the challenges is that people don't talk about volunteering because they're afraid it comes off as, bragging or self-righteous. But we are trying to reframe that as, you're an ambassador. So one of the best things you can do for the place that you're volunteering is to tell people that you're volunteering there and say, would you please come with me? I mean, think about, like, restaurants are a perfect example. Word of mouth is like the best possible, marketing opportunity, right? It's free and it's effective. But if people are never talking about volunteering, we are absolutely missing this huge opportunity to recruit others. And so, like you were saying, if you have a bad volunteer experience, it is so detrimental because then people, like you said, just think, I don't like volunteering. I don't want to come back. So that is a big part of why Volunteer Odyssey does what we do and the way that we do it. So we review volunteer feedback to make sure that volunteers are having a good experience. And we only partner with a set number of nonprofits so we can monitor the quality of what is happening. So we want the nonprofits to be making good use of these volunteers so that they come back and invite people. But we also want to make sure that the volunteers are being helpful and are contributing, because a lot of times when you go in and you're trying to help, it may not be exactly what somebody needs. So how do we get the volunteers to the places that need them the most and could make great use of their time?
That's a good segue, because when you talk about trying to volunteer, but doing it in a meaningful way, a way that benefits and doesn't hurt the nonprofit, we'll come back to all of those conversations on the front end, because that'll lead us into corporate compass and engagement opportunities. And so we'll cycle back to that one. But I want to go on this new thread for what you mentioned in terms of how do you make volunteerism meaningful and impactful and not hurtful to those you're trying to serve? That led you on to me, a really cool storyline, personally, professionally, spiritually. Like there's a lot to unpack there. But for you serving overseas, and we recently, we'll talk about this too in terms of a trip to Texas and you being a part of the cityCURRENT team and partnering in some really powerful ways with Higginbotham. And anyway, we're on the plane ride to Fort Worth to host a big event with Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney of Folds of Honor, our first signature speaker series event with Higginbotham and Hillwood in Texas. We were talking about your last name and Sarah Petschonek and Petschonek and like where you put the emphasis. And
I forgot we talked about that.
Yeah. And so, that then like when you look at serving overseas in Poland and trying to make a difference around the war in Ukraine, something that's meaningful for you. And so give a little bit of why you wanted to serve. And then we'll talk about you serving over in Poland and trying to help with the war over in Ukraine.
Yeah, it was a couple different things that all kind of aligned at the same time. And so like probably most people, I've been reading about the war in Ukraine and watching what's happening and just reflecting on, what that means. And there are obviously a lot of conflicts, right, happening around the world. And so, I think this one in particular, we think our family is from that region. And so that was part of why I wanted to go and help in that way. And the kind of other piece of this is that, during COVID, we did a lot to volunteer and help set up some of the vaccination sites here and with the city of Germantown, town of Collierville. And I just really enjoyed that opportunity to do that different kind of service, that sort of disaster response recovery piece. And so my friend Penelope gave me this book called The Nightingale, which if you've never read it, is very powerful. It's about this young woman who during World War II just essentially jumps in and helps with something that she sees is needed. So it's kind of all these pieces at the same time. And I finished reading this book, closed the book, and thought, I'm going to volunteer in Ukraine. And my mom said, absolutely not. And so Poland is right next door. And at this point, so many of the people who have left Ukraine have gone to Poland. And that's really where a lot of the services are needed. So it's interesting, when I got to Poland, everyone was speaking to me in Polish. When I go anywhere else in the world, nobody assumes I speak the language. Everybody can tell I'm American. So I guess I at least fit in southern Poland. But that was kind of how I got there. And it was my first time to volunteer abroad. And it was just, it was an experience that was really powerful. And I'm actually still trying to get my head around and figure out how to even talk about it. Also, we totally say our last name wrong. I'm really sure of that now. Yeah.
What? So I'm trying to figure out kind of the best way to paint this picture, but give us maybe when you're trying to describe it to someone in terms of what it's like, because I know obviously limited Wi-Fi, base camp, like what did you walk into? Let's start with that.
Yeah. So I volunteered with this amazing organization called All Hands and Hearts. And our base essentially was this house, like sort of on the outskirts of Krakow. There were 30 people staying in this house, 3 bedrooms, 2 showers. So, it was kind of intense. It's not the living environment that I was used to. And so when I'm first getting there, it's this interesting dynamic of, oh my gosh, this is going to be really challenging for an introvert who, always has time and space to be in quiet versus, well, there are a lot of people who don't have a safe place to sleep and clean water and electricity. And so it is really stressful, but I should also feel very grateful. So it's this interesting balance. And the room that I was going to be staying in, they opened the door, which is a generous description. The door bounced up against one of the bunk beds. It didn't open all the way. And in this pretty small room, there were 12 or 14 bunk beds. And I was at least fortunate to get one on the bottom. And that kind of really set the tone for, okay, what are the resources? What are the expectations? And, kind of going where you're needed and then trying to, thrive and function in that environment.
I also want to point out, you did this on your own. When we were talking with Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney, he was asking, so are you going with others? And you're like, no, I'm doing this on my own.
Yeah.
And so to me right there just takes tremendous courage and obviously sacrifice for what you're doing. And so carry that into one maybe story that articulates kind of what you experienced, what you saw, maybe the power of being able to serve someone else. Is there a story that resonates with you?
I think it's hard to pick. So I think something that I learned that was really helpful is, a lot of times, especially in international disaster context, this is something that I'm learning. You go to serve, but it's really about sort of empowering the community that's, benefiting from those services to regain control of their own life and their own culture. And so the idea is not just to go and serve, but to go and contribute in a way where you are not needed anymore. And I think that was a really interesting perspective shift. So many of the service opportunities in the States are ongoing or perpetual. And with this program in particular, they serve an immediate need, and then they close up and they move to a different part of the world. And so as I'm thinking about that, there is this one organization, and we were helping teach English. And I had no idea what to expect. This was my first day, my first volunteer opportunity. And I'm thinking we're starting with, "Hi, and my name is." And this community has practiced so much and learned so much. We were talking about adjectives and asking them to describe things. And they're using words like vibrant and brilliant and rustic. And I thought, oh, you don't need me here for this, right? Like, you just need time and space to practice and talk with other people in English. And one of the things I learned is that a lot of the people who left Ukraine speak Ukrainian and Russian. But when you come to Poland, you have to learn Polish and English if you want to work in some of these major cities. So they left their country. They're trying to learn two different languages at the same time. And there is this one woman, Anna, and her English is impeccable. And so at the end of this experience, we were asking for feedback and how can we do it better? And I'm writing it down, and I realized she can do this. Her English is this is a learning opportunity for her. I'm not needed in this role. How can I return this experience to the people who live here, whose community this is? And so she hopped right up, and her handwriting was much better than mine, and wrote down this feedback. And I think the people giving feedback were probably more likely to be candid because they're giving it to her, even though we were there, instead of giving it to us. So that's a kind of a long and complex example, but just that one simple thing, handing that marker over to Anna and saying, this is yours. You take control and ownership of this, was just really salient for me. And I learned a lot just in that one specific moment.
Was there something or some things that the organization did to prepare you that you thought, wow, this really helped me to be more impactful, to better understand the circumstance and the situation, to understand my role?
Yeah, they did. They really did an incredible job. So one of the first things they did before I even got there was they gave us all these resources about how to take care of your mental health, what to do if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, how to ask for help, how to call home, all these different things, what to do if you need some quiet time, how to go for a walk by yourself and what the rules are for that and that kind of thing. We had an orientation the first day I was there, and I learned so much in that orientation. It was talking about safeguarding, which is how you take care of the people that you're there to work with and you don't overstep your bounds. And there were three of us in orientation, and Amanda, who was our coordinator and our orientation leader, I kept taking pictures of the slides. And finally, she's like, "Sarah, I can just send you the slides." Okay, thank you. And one of the slides that just has really stuck with me is this balance between, or even conflict between, efficiency and dignity. And so as you think about, sometimes those are at odds, which I had never actually thought about before. So at a soup kitchen where you can feed 1,000 people, in an hour, what's that experience like to the people coming through that line? They get 5 seconds of interaction versus having this very customized sort of hands-on, what do you need and what do you want, is much slower, but returns a lot of power and dignity to the person that you're working with. And I had never thought about that before, that kind of like tug and pull between the two. So they did an amazing job equipping us with how to take care of ourselves, but also how to be a good steward in the community that we were in. And I'm actually trying to incorporate a lot of that into what we are doing here at home.
When you look at the idea that kind of led us down this path of really being impactful, not hurtful with your volunteerism,
yeah,
what are maybe one or two things that you pull away like that in terms of the conflict between dignity and efficiency that you want to bring back home?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that really stuck with me is the way that this organization, All Hands and Hearts, they decide if they're even needed in a community. And so they don't just show up and decide to help, right? They have a small team that goes in and starts making these connections and these contacts and these relationships and says, this is what we do. Do you even want us here? And sometimes the answer is no. And that's fine. Like, why do you want to force yourself into a situation where you're not needed or not wanted? Like, that's not good for anyone. And so as we think about, helping here, a lot of times we try and do things that are maybe well-meaning, but not actually helpful. And so I'm thinking specifically about a time at the food bank here, the Mid-South Food Bank, and we had finished kind of packing, our boxes, and this was Sarah's fault. And I was there with my team, and I thought, well, there's more boxes there. There's more stuff. Let's just start packing. And the coordinator came back in and was like, no, that's not how we were going to do those, right? And so just jumping in and trying to help without being sure that that's what's needed was really another very powerful reminder of that. And that's one of the things I love about the way that we work with nonprofits, or try to work with our nonprofits here in Memphis, is that we let them tell us what they need. And they work closely with these communities, and they're the ones who say, we need this done. We need it done this way. I think probably one of the famous examples, you've probably heard this, Jeremy, is that, sometimes these big groups come in and want something to do, and then the nonprofit has to generate this opportunity for them to do. And then every group that comes in repaints that same wall every Saturday. Like, what is the purpose of that? And I think it's this interesting sort of conflict of interests, maybe, or at least competing interests with people who want to help and people who need help. And so for nonprofits in particular, sometimes it's hard to say, we don't want you to come because our staff is supposed to be off and resting that day, or we don't have anything for you to do. And so sometimes we put too much pressure on the nonprofits to have an opportunity when we want it, as opposed to going and serving in an opportunity when it's actually really needed.
Well, and one of the things, the permission to say no, right? I mean, that's a piece of it. And being true to the mission versus just trying to chase what could be a potential dollar down the road, which is a conflict. And so before we switch over, because that will be a good segue into Corporate Compass and working with companies and making it easy, but making it meaningful, I want to touch on one more thing coming out of the experience for you. Coming back home, and obviously you're still processing it, but how has it changed your perspective on your role in the world, your ability to make a difference, your, even just the change that you're trying to make locally? How is it already starting to change you personally, professionally, spiritually, now that you've kind of come back and are starting to process it? Yeah,
that's a great question. How long is this podcast? It's interesting because, I was gone for less than 2 weeks, and I feel like I lived a lifetime in that 2 weeks. And so, to come back, and I feel like in some ways I've changed, like in a good way, but have changed, but nothing else here has changed. Right. And so it's kind of hard to take that new perspective and those experiences and figure out even how to talk about them. Like, this is actually the most I've talked about it that I've been back. People keep asking, and I don't even know how to convey it. Like, sometimes it'll just come out in these funny bits and pieces. And so, this is not exactly what you're asking, but, when, even little things here that I appreciate so much. So when we were there, we had to take military showers. I don't know if anybody knows what military showers are. I did not. But if you think about, you turn the water off when you're brushing your teeth in between, it's that, but a shower. And so if you have long hair and you're covered in drywall dust, that's a challenge. And I think everybody has had this experience of having these deep thoughts in the shower and like these things kind of clicking. Well, when you're in one of two showers and there are 5 people waiting in line and you have turned the water off and you have shampoo in your hair and you turn the water back on and nothing happens, that is a really interesting time to reflect on your life and your priorities and what you are doing. And so even being here, and like this morning, I turned on the shower, hot water came out. That is something that I have a very different view of now. And just so little things like that. But then also these huge things like this tug of war between like dignity and structure and helping and hurting. And some of those larger concepts, I'm really trying to figure out how we incorporate here and make the best use of things. And so trying to have more conversations with our nonprofits about, what do you want? What do you need? How can we be a better partner? And, there's still a lot to incorporate that I'm still thinking through.
And I think when you talk about what you experienced and you talk to someone who serves, in the military or has served as a veteran and what they saw during war, you see the very worst. You also see the very best. You see humanity. You see families fighting for survival, doing whatever it takes to survive. I mean, it does reprioritize what's important and the values that we have in terms of showers and things like that, the things that we value. It puts it in a very different perspective that does change you moving forward. And I think all of that becomes something that it really is, people say a life-changing experience. And sometimes, it's this, but in this case, it really is a life-changing experience that forever shapes your perspectives and your priorities. So
absolutely.
And I think this will be something that, over time too, as you continue to process, I think that's kind of that fun evolution of you as a person and the maturity, but also these conversations that we can have that become meaningful for others so that they can process it as well. Because that's the point, is sharing the lessons that you learned so that we can all be more mindful, a greater spark to make a difference. And so let's go ahead and transition into Corporate Compass. Let's start with a little bit on the Volunteer Odyssey partnership, strategic partnership with cityCURRENT and Higginbotham, because that will lead us into then what we're doing with Corporate Compass. And I'll give my quick, high level view, and then I'll let you dive in deep. So we have shared, friends, and I've known you obviously since even before, starting Odyssey. So we go back over 10 years now, almost 11 years working with Volunteer Odyssey, always, sending people your way to get involved in the city, working with, tracking the volunteerism and the metrics and everything, sending companies and us obviously using you and your platform. So a long history and legacy there. And, some of the board members on your end are cityCURRENT partners and came to us and said, basically, hey, what if we all found a way to be more efficient with the promotional, operational expenses? What would it look like to reinvent kind of this corporate social impact, corporate social responsibility, social entrepreneurialism? How can we reinvent this model? And so through the process of working with Higginbotham and the team, bringing you into the office so you have shared office space, allowing, Volunteer Odyssey to step in as a strategic partner and to leverage the relationships, the promotional, like us basically kind of saying, okay, we're all in with you. Let's go in together and lift, because volunteerism, for all these reasons we're talking about, is so critical to the success of our community. So that's my version. I'll let you carry it forward and share the Volunteer Odyssey, Dr. Sarah Petschonek version.
I like your version, Jeremy. Let's go with your
Well, it's
version.
all true. I mean, it's the same version. It's just you can add more detail to it.
I mean, so, there's so many ways this was perfect timing and just this amazing opportunity. And, like we were talking about, we don't have enough volunteers. We've never had enough volunteers. It's worse now than it's ever been. There is a massive volunteer shortage in Memphis and around the country and around the world. And so, why is that and how do we fix that? So, like I said, one of the challenges is that people don't talk about volunteering. And so if you're not talking about volunteering, it's really hard to get more volunteers. And so us being able to amplify our message through cityCURRENT and through Higginbotham and through all of these resources and channels gives us this really powerful, valuable way to get more volunteers into the places that need them the most. And so even if all the people listening to this podcast, even if one person thinks, you know what, I'm going to email Sarah and I'm going to sign up, or I'm going to go to the website and I'm going to sign up, that's something that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And so this is really a dream partnership for us to have access to these corporations, that already value and love cityCURRENT, who are coming and want to do good things, and then having this way to connect them to meaningful opportunities with these nonprofits. It was just like perfect timing, and it's so exciting. Like you said, I met you before Volunteer Odyssey even started, when it was just an idea, and now to be, kind of on the same team is just really cool and exciting, and we're going to be able to do really great things.
I think there's a lot of kind of subplots to it. One is the power of relationships, doing the right thing over a long period of time. It builds strong relationships so that when these opportunities arise, you can take advantage. On the flip side, I give full credit to Higginbotham because we threw them a lot of curveballs. Hey, we want to bring them in-house. We want to provide office space. We want to leverage this. We want to work together. We want to, offer support in a lot of different ways because we want to put our money where our mouth is. When you talk about being an organization that wants to power the good in so many different ways, including volunteerism, we've got to do our part in the community to help lift. And so I view it as a critical ingredient to success for the community, but also an imperative responsibility for us to be able to say, look, we have an opportunity to be able to lower your operational costs, to provide promotional exposure, operational efficiencies, like all these things that we do, not necessarily in our sleep, but it's a part of our business processes that we can use to leverage to help Volunteer Odyssey be way more successful, that in the end will greatly benefit our community because that's what's needed, just like we're talking about when you look at the environment we're in. So
exactly.
I think the cool thing is that when you talk about why it's so important, yes, you can recruit volunteers one at a time. Yes, that's important. But when you talk about moving the needle quickly as possible, you go where the masses are. And the masses, potential employees and volunteers, an army of do-gooders, is with the companies. And so go ahead and dive into Corporate Compass and what this model and framework looks like.
Yeah, we're really excited about this. And this is something that we've built with the input of and collaboration from the cityCURRENT team, but also some local corporations and nonprofits. So the idea is, these big one day of service sorts of things, that has a role and that has a place. So this is not saying those are bad or stop doing those. This is about how do we fill that gap between individual volunteers sort of trickling in, a big corporate team coming one day a year. What about all the other needs all year round? Mandy, who's the volunteer coordinator at Catholic Charities, who is absolutely wonderful, called me about a month ago and said, we have 0 volunteers signed up for our mobile food pantry next week. What are we going to do? And so that kind of started the wheels turning. And Jeremy and I and the team were talking about how do we get corporations to volunteer all year round? We need volunteers 365 days a year, and people have time to do it. A lot of companies even offer volunteer time off, VTO, but most employees aren't using it. And so why is that? There are a lot of reasons there. We can help companies unpack that. But the whole point is to get, if your company wants to do good things in Memphis, getting your employees in a place where they can make a meaningful impact and that it's helping them feel more loyal to your company. Like this is a win-win-win sort of across the board. So we're really excited to start rolling out this sort of corporate compass model. And we already have 1 or 2 companies who are signed up for it that we're excited to tell you about really soon.
And one of them is a city of Germantown.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So we've partnered with City of Germantown for a long time. And the idea for this model is that we will take a look at your company and figure out, where you want to go with your corporate volunteerism, what it's like now, and how we help you get there, right? And a big piece of that is making volunteering accessible and simple and meaningful. And so a lot of the conversation, Jerry, you and I were just having about, my sort of aha moments volunteering abroad, those moments exist right here. And we are in desperate need of volunteers. And so if you have ever thought, I would like to do more, like what is my purpose or how can I contribute? It's this. we need you. We need your help. And if we can do this through companies and keep it front and center, that could potentially be an absolute game changer for the entire Memphis community in terms of meeting community needs.
And obviously, when you look at this ChangeMakers podcast and even through Higginbotham, when you talk about what we're discussing, there is local impact in Memphis. I mean, obviously, that's the focus for Volunteer Odyssey, but everything that we're doing and learning, the idea is we want to freely share this and start kind of planting these seeds in all these different communities, because everything that we're experiencing here is being experienced in other communities. And we have an opportunity to share these best practices and really move the needle in a positive direction for all these different communities that are struggling. And so I think there's a broad applicability to everything that we're discussing around our nation and really around our world, just like you're talking about. When you talk about volunteerism, especially on the corporate side, the why, right? Like you kind of alluded to it, but consumers are basing their purchasing decisions based on the social good efforts. So they're choosing where to buy goods and services based on what they see in terms of the impact communities are having philanthropically in the communities. Employees are choosing where to work because they want that purpose in the workplace. They're also turning to their companies and saying, hey, I want volunteer experiences as a part of the workday, not on my own free time. I want you and need you to help me get involved in the community. And there's a lot of reasons for that in terms of socially what we're experiencing and why. But the simple reality is that consumers are driving it, employees are driving it, and it's needed. And so I think, why should we care? Well, there's every reason in the world. And when you look at the statistics, companies with that higher purpose, with engagement opportunities, with opportunities for their employees to go and serve, they're more productive, their employees are happier, and the statistics in terms of their return on investment is way higher than those that don't. And so there's a lot of reasons.
I mean, so like you said, the research shows that the employees who have opportunities to volunteer and use those opportunities to volunteer have higher job satisfaction, lower turnover, and prospective employees. Now, this has become a big piece of what people are looking for is, yes, you can make money, right? But when I'm looking for a job, I want to work for a place that, is invested in the community where we're living and where we're working and is giving back. And so from a employee retention and employee recruitment standpoint, it matters. From a customer engagement standpoint, it matters. And then you live and work in this community. Like anything that you do to make our community a better place, like ultimately comes back to you, right? So it is just this amazing opportunity and intersection for every company and every person to help build whatever community you're in, whether that's Memphis or anywhere else in the country.
So what advice would you give for individuals? I mean, obviously, the first one that you alluded to right out of the gate is invite people, talk about your volunteerism, be a champion for the nonprofit and the causes, and make sure to be intentional to invite others to participate in sharing that joy and that experience.
Right,
But what words of encouragement, what advice would you give for individuals to start getting involved and taking those next steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, just decide to start. I know that sounds silly, but I'm a nerdy psychologist, right? Deciding that you're going to do it, even before you decide what you're going to do, is huge. So as you're sitting here listening to this, let's see, we'll do a little psychology experiment on the audience, right? Do you want to help? And can you just decide right now that you are going to do something? Right? So that's the first piece. And then the next piece I would say is that not every volunteer opportunity is for every person. We want you to shop. We want you to find something that you actually like, because if you don't like it, you're not going to come back, and that doesn't help anybody, right? So what are the things that you love to do? There was one opportunity I did where I was sitting at the top of a bounce house water slide, making sure the kids went down feet first. I learned that is not my ideal volunteer opportunity, right? And so what is the thing that you love to do? It might be working with kids. It might be teaching financial literacy. It might be going and serving lunch, one Friday a month with your team from work. So don't be afraid to explore different things and think, okay, maybe not this one, but what is the one that's going to make you just light up and really, make you feel like you're contributing but also make you feel like it's enriching your life too. That's really the goal. Like there's so many different ways to volunteer, and it's just about finding the right fit for you.
Now, for a business leader, what advice would you give them? Obviously, they need to look into Corporate Compass. That's, the guarantee.
Yeah, of course. That's the first piece of advice. Yeah.
That's it. But for a business leader, because they really do set the tone. I mean, the employees, if it's just lip service, that creates challenges. So if you're out there serving and it's authentic leadership and servant leadership, that makes a bold statement, but it also too opens the floodgates for your team to want to go and get involved. So there's real power in servant leadership in terms of setting the stage and being that galvanizing force for your company and your teams. But what advice would you give for business leaders to be intentional with their service?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And one of the things that we've seen is just telling your employees they can go volunteer and sending out a link is not enough. Just like anything else, like even think about this open enrollment sort of time for a lot of people. You can't send one email and one link. This is why you get 30 emails from your company about open enrollment. So one, just acknowledging that it has to be an ongoing thing. It has to be a conversation, just like anything else that you do with your employees. And then they have to believe they can actually use it and that you want them to use it, but that it's still up to them. It's this tricky balance, right? Because you want to remind your employees that they have volunteer time off. You want their direct supervisors to say, yes, it really is okay for you to go and do this. Like, we want you to do this. But you don't want to have a situation where they say, everybody better go volunteer 4 hours this month, right? We call that voluntold. That's not the same thing. So how do you make sure people know they have the opportunity, they know the steps, they have the permission, and they feel like they're encouraged but not forced to go make a difference and be happy about it. So there are a lot of different things companies can do. And one is just kind of knowing where you are right now. So being able to assess your current culture and your current approach to volunteering. And then I think, some sort of low-hanging fruit is seeing their senior leadership go out and volunteer and then having them be the ones who invite you, right? So if you see the CEO of your company out volunteering, you see a picture and the CEO says, hey, next time I'd love for 4 of you to come with me. Who would like to join? That is huge right there. And it really is such a simple thing, but it makes a tremendous difference. So there are all different kinds of things companies can do to get people to take advantage, and I'm really excited to start talking with you about it.
Absolutely. So this is one of those that, like I said, we could have you come back on, a million episodes and there would still never be enough time to unpack all the knowledge and, the inspiration and everything that we're talking about. So let's go ahead and switch over. We'll do a lightning round. It'll be fun to compare the answers now between, the ones back on episode 5.
Oh no, I should have done my homework.
Yeah. See how much you've matured and how things have changed, or if they've changed at all. Right. So,
Jeremy, I never mature. Come on.
Yeah. It's like, I saw a thing where for men, especially, it's like you grow older, but you never grow up. Like you're still dino chicken nuggets.
That's pretty good.
It's true. All right.
Okay,
so
I think I'm ready.
First one is, what do you like to do to relax?
So I love being outside, especially like at night. And so I just learned there's this dark sky zone in Arkansas where you can go and kind of see out into the Milky Way. And so I'm really excited to go and do that and try and turn off my brain. So that's probably next on my list to try.
When someone comes from out of town to visit Memphis, where do you like to take them?
Oh gosh, how long do I have? Like, are they here for like an hour or a weekend or a lifetime?
A weekend. We'll say a weekend.
A weekend, yeah. So definitely something outdoors. So maybe walk over the Harahan Bridge or go bike, on the Greenway. A free show at the Overton Park Shell, dinner at one of my favorite restaurants, Echo, Bari, Napa Cafe, something like that. And then I like to take in a volunteer. People like kind of roll their eyes sometimes, but they end up being glad that we did it. And so if that's ever something I can work in, I really like to do that. And then one of my other favorite things is you can do this driving tour at Elmwood Cemetery, where you can learn all about the history of Memphis through the people who are buried there, who, are permanent residents, basically. And that's a really cool way to spend an afternoon.
I think though that the volunteerism, especially because I did it in San Antonio, I was there for a few days visiting an office with Higginbotham, and that's one of the first things I was like, let's go volunteer and let's do it. And it was awesome. It connects you to the community, and I think it's just a powerful way to build relationships, but to be immersed in the community. So I love it.
Absolutely. Like, what helps you better understand a city than really getting in there and seeing what the city is? So yeah.
Yeah. And you meet amazing people who care. I mean, that's the other thing about volunteers is you're meeting people who genuinely care. So they're going to care about others and they're going to care about you. And I think that's, you're putting yourself around just amazing people by doing that. So, all right, what is a favorite place that you like to visit outside of Memphis?
I'm trying to decide. There's so many amazing places. I feel like this is a lightning round. I feel like I'm failing. I should have a fast answer.
You can list off a bunch. There's no rules. We're not going to be like,
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like we were talking about, I just went to Poland and I didn't get to see a lot of Poland because we were volunteering. So that's something I would love to go back and explore more. It's such an interesting country, and I don't know that it's the top of most people's lists to go and see. So I would love to do that again. And then anything where there's wine country, I'm in. So any place that has vineyards, like my parents live in Maryland. So whenever I go visit them, we go check out some wineries up there. Yeah.
What's something on your bucket list that you want to cross off?
I would really like to learn how to scuba dive. It scares me a little, but that's, where all growth happens, right? So at some point I would like to get scuba certified. Yeah.
What is a quote that inspires you? You don't have to get it verbatim, but just what's a quote that inspires you or a saying?
Yeah. Anne Frank said, I am going to mess it up a little, but no one need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Like, you can just decide right now that you're going to do it. Anybody can do that at any time with any amount of resources. Like, you can just go and do it. Like, that's really pretty incredible when you think about it.
Give us a tradition or a fun thing that you and your family do.
So, gosh, I hope I didn't tell this one last time, but we make chicken and dumplings every year on Halloween. And even though we don't live in the same city, my mom and I still do it. So when I was about 5, she made it one year because there were, 3 kids and dad was out of town and it was easy. But you got to be careful what you do for a 5-year-old because that's when they start to remember. And so the next year I said, where are the chicken and dumplings? Like, Thanksgiving is turkey and, Christmas is a tree, and we have chicken and dumplings on Halloween. So it became a sort of surprise tradition for my mom. But now it's something that we always do, even if we're at different places.
That's awesome. I love that it goes with Halloween too. Like, you have, trick-or-treating in costumes and such, and then chicken and dumplings. That's the go-to.
Like, it is so ingrained, it doesn't even sound weird to me when you say it that way. Like, you carve pumpkins. Why do we do that, right? You get candy, you wear costumes, you hang skeletons in your yard. Like, chicken and dumplings, how's that the weirdest part of that, right? So, but yes, chicken and dumplings, Halloween. If anybody else does it, you have to let me know, because it's just this quirky thing that the Petschoniks or the Petschoneks or whoever we are do on Halloween.
I feel like there's probably a few others that have, chicken and dumplings Halloween.
We have all kinds of weird family traditions.
So I'd say there's bound to be somebody else. What's a recent movie or TV show or something that you've watched?
I watched A Small Light. I don't know what service it's on. I can't remember, but it is about the woman who hid Anne Frank's family during the Holocaust. And it is incredible. It is so well done. If you haven't seen it, it's a mini series. It's like 8 episodes. It's phenomenal. You have to watch it. It's amazing.
Well, got last 2 questions. This one is, you're crafting and creating your legacy every single day, making a huge difference as a change maker. But many, many years from now, what do you hope your legacy is personally and obviously professionally with Volunteer Odyssey?
That's an interesting question. I just hope that it's not really about me. I don't know if that's a cop-out answer, but just I want other people to go and help and find meaningful experiences. And yeah, it doesn't have to be my story, as long as, I've helped other people go and make a difference. I think that's it.
Yeah. And that's part of being a change maker, right? Is being a spark to get people involved. And It's not about you. So
yeah.
wrap up with where we can follow you, though. So it is about you on this last question is where do we can follow you in Volunteer Odyssey? So website, social media, how do we connect in and learn more about Corporate Compass and all the good that Volunteer Odyssey does and that you do and your amazing team to power the good?
Okay. I know the answer to this question. So if you have any questions at all, you can email me, Sarah, SARRAH, @volunteerodyssey.com. Don't worry, you don't have to spell my last name to get in touch. And then we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, and our website is volunteerodyssey.com. From there, it'll take you right to the platform where you can sign up to volunteer. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. And then we also send volunteer opportunities out through the cityCURRENT newsletter. So if you're already subscribed to that, you'll see a section every newsletter that has 3 featured opportunities. So if you're thinking about signing up, we send some really cool ones over to the cityCURRENT team to share with you.
Well, Dr. Sarah Petschonek, you are an amazing change maker. And whatever your last name is in terms of how we say it, whether it's Petschonek, we'll get it right at some point. But you are a change maker, and we greatly appreciate and love everything that you do to make a difference and to power the good, not just in the Mid-South, but literally sharing all this expertise and knowledge around the world. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for being a change maker, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to all the volunteers who are out there doing this every day. I'm excited to meet everybody and talk soon.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the ChangeMakers podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
Thank you for listening to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by cityCURRENT and brought to you by Lipscomb and Pitts Insurance. To learn more about our guests and share your stories of others leading by example, visit us online at citycurrent.com or follow us on social media using @citycurrent. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen. Now, think big, start small, and act now. Be a change maker.